Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. This is Inside the Lab with Peter Kalos, and I'm Peter. How are you all? This is our second podcast, and we're continuing from where we left off the first time. We talked about the history of ancient acting teachers and acting methods. And where we left off last time was the end of the whole Russian Revolution. We had talked about the early days, Thespis, Quintilian, mimicking in front of a mirror. Then we talked about Delsart, who brought in the notion of relaxation. We talked about Hill, who said, forget the audience, do it for yourselves, do it to be on stage. And then the big one, which is one of the biggest ones out there, Stanislavski, who was looking for truth in a performance. And he devised what they call the system, relaxation, concentration, attention, public solitude, sensory recall, imagination, circumstances of the given scene, which all those fed two of the bigger acting teachers after that, Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler, which we'll talk about. And of course, there was Michael Chekhov, who talked about smashing the fourth wall, and Vangtankov, who his magic tool was the what if factor. What if this happened? What if that happened? That's a very, very general breakdown, but it makes you understand as far as where we were. So all these guys, the Moscow Art Theater, went to America in 1922, and they did a couple of productions. I believe the first one was Fideo, and the second one was Cherry Orchard. Now, what happened is no one had seen a production like this. It absolutely blew people away. The sense of realism as far as the acting is concerned, the sense of realism as far as the set is concerned, and it kind of showed people where they're headed, or what's possible in theater. This really, really moved people. What happened is when the Moscow Art Theater went back to Moscow, two of the students stayed behind. There was a guy named Richard Boleslavsky and Maria Uspenskaya. You can actually find footage of Maria Uspenskaya in a couple of films. I'm sure they're available online to see her and her acting skills. And they realized that Americans want to know what we do up north. So they sat around, developed their own school, and started teaching it. The program was down to 2 years. It was a 2-year program. And by the way, they called it the American Lab Theater. And it's not by chance that we are called the Lab. That's where I got the name from, all right? Because I'd heard about them. And what I liked about them was that they were old school, trying to stick to the disciplines of what they'd learned, and also going out in the new world and saying, let's explore things, let's try things, let's see what sticks and what doesn't stick. They weren't very formal as far as this is how it should be. They were exploring, which came a lot from Stanislavski, all right? We got that name from there, okay? There are a lot of schools today, ironically, use the word actors lab. No, not actors lab, actors studio. You'll find that everywhere. Everyone tags on actors studio to the end of the name, which was the biggest thing that hit America after these guys. So I tell people it's a name that they're borrowing from America. The actual actor studio is in America. There's one in LA, one in New York, and we'll get to that later. But we got our name from the lab, and I like the way it resonates. Also, there's another lab also at the Lincoln Center in LA, in America, and they had the same kind of theory. But here we have Boleslavsky and Uspenskaya, and they're teaching. The first year, what they would teach is they focused on the body, right? And I think, I'll check my notes here. I've got my notes, lovely. The first year, it was teaching things about the body, relaxation, sensory work, effective memory, all these kinds of things. So they actually have what we call an actor's body to develop that. And I believe that was taught by Uspenskaya. And the second year was taught by Boleslavsky, who taught about scene structure, scene breakdown, analyzing the script, which a lot of that Stella took on, right? Now, Lee Strasberg came to America. He was born in 1901 in Ukraine, from memory. And what happened is he came to America and he had heard about them. So he went to the Lab Theater and studied with them, right? And he left. Now, this is not a big issue, but this is one that's been a point of debate. He left after year one. So in year one, they had done all this body stuff. He didn't stick around for year two, and a lot of people wonder what if he had stuck around for year two? Because he was very much immersed in doing all these things, effective memories and stuff, which he coined himself, but he was very much focused on the body itself. I'm not saying that he didn't do the other things. He did, but he's known for the internal work primarily, right? And he left there, and then he got together with a group of people that had the same ideas and said, wow, we're learning all this knowledge from these lovely Russian people. What's missing in our world as far as theater is concerned? What's missing in our world? So they got together and he started talking to people, and they had the same ideas, same vibe. The people that he surrounded himself with, there was Harold Clurman, Cheryl Crawford, and Lee Strasberg. So it was those three that got together and said, where do we live as America and as a voice when it comes to theater? And what does our theater do and represent? Harold Clurman was the big one for that. He was, if you read some beautiful articles, they're actually amazing to read. He was a theater critic, and I'm sure you can find them online. Read, you'll be hard-pressed to find a man that understood theater and the connection to society. Just eloquent writing, an amazing speaker, right? I haven't heard him speak publicly, of course, but I've read his speeches, and they're just so on point. That was Harold Clurman. There was Cheryl Crawford, who was primarily, they used her in a sense of getting money to build this thing, getting money to get the group theater going. So every time they needed money, they went to her. And of course, there was Lee Strasberg, right, who was the knowledge as far as what we're going to teach. They started the group theater in May 1930. There was 27 actors and 3 of them. And they originally, they were thought of themselves as the Moscow Art Theater, let's call it US style, right? Now, when they started, it wasn't easy at the beginning, especially. There was a lot of issues going on, right? They were aiming to get actors from, talk about diversity, different cultural backgrounds. They wanted to get actors from different classes in society and hear their voices and put their voices on stage. Stella Adler, in the early days, was one of their students. We don't want to call her a student. It wasn't like that. They weren't thinking like, I'm a teacher and you're a student. It was more of a group. That's why they called it the group theater. It was more a group effort. But Stella was one of their students. There was people like Morris Karnofsky, Sanford Meisner was there. That's important to understand that. We'll talk about him later on. Robert Lewis, Francis Farmer was there. Eli Kazan was there. Clifford Odets was there, who was the writer. There is a photo. This is quite a very well-known photo. I first saw it in Kazan's book, Life. And this is the photo of the group theater. Here are the original founding members. This is Harold Clurman, we spoke about. This here is Lee Strasberg. And Cheryl Crawford is right there. Now, this here is Sanford Meisner. There's Sanford Meisner. That there is Clifford Odets. Where is Clifford Odets? That's Kazan right there. I believe that there is Clifford Odets with the glasses. This here is Francis Farmer, the actual Francis Farmer. That there is, I believe it's Lee's second wife, Paula Strasberg, and I believe that's Stella Adler's daughter. And there's Bobby Lewis right there. So there's Lee Strasberg, Meisner, Bobby Lewis, Harold Clurman, I forgot his name, but I do remember it, Cheryl Crawford, Paula Strasberg, Stella Adler's daughter, Francis Farmer, and Kazan is right there. Clifford Odets. That movement is amazing. It's hard to find. I'd love to find a group of people and do this in the film world. That's the dream. But it's the mentality that they had. They were far from the pressures of the industry. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They just wanted to find their voice as artists, and they kind of locked themselves away and said, hey, this is what we're going to find. We're going to develop our work and our craft. And Lee, being the teacher, he kind of led the way as far as what we're teaching. One of the people interesting, by the way, is a woman named Frances Farmer. And you should see the film Frances, starring Jessica Lange. She's brilliant in it. Sam Shepard is in it. But very, very early on in the film, there's a scene where Clifford Odets, the character, says to Frances, what do you see? What do you see on the streets? And there's a young kid there in the alleyway, I believe it is, and he's got short pants. And Clifford Odets says to her, look, he's wearing short pants. It means they're hand-me-downs. He's hungry, he's this, he's that. And he says to her, that's what you need to see as an artist. You need to see what's out there and put it into your work. It's an amazing film. And I know it's hard to find, but watch it so you understand the history of the group theater, because it's actually there, right? So, Lee then is the first one that took the system from Stanislavski and called it the method. And we'll talk about what he brought to it. He gave it more of a structure, more of a discipline, right? And that's known as Lee's work, okay? His main tool was an exercise called effective memory, right? Or sense memory, effective memory. And he really stuck to that. And we'll describe the exercise very soon. But he also directed their first plays together. So you get together, find what plays to do. And Clurman was adamant that they start doing plays that reflect their society. Not Russian plays. I mean, they're great. They had a lot of respect for them. But that's where they got Clifford Odets to say, hey, what's going on with us now? Why don't you start writing as a resident writer the voice of what's going on with the people? We'll get together, workshop it, and put it out there. One of the early plays they did was one called House of Connolly, and they received 16 curtain calls. That is insane. We get thrilled if we get one person standing up in the audience. Imagine getting 16 curtain calls that they had, shown America what's also possible now, because they'd taken it from them. They also did one called Men in White, which Lee directed also, okay? Wasn't so much of a critical success, but it was a financial success, and he put Lee's name out there as a good director, right? Which was important at the time. They did this for quite a few years. I think it was 3 years. And they had their ups and downs as far as critics, and they had their ups and downs. But they also observed that why did some plays work better than others? And that's what Lee started going, why does this one work? Why is this one more consistent? And he started developing his method based on what he saw, right? It's also, what happened is that there were some people, the most generic way I can describe the effective memory is, let's assume something tragic happened to you. A friend of mine was telling me how one day they came home and they found their dog dead in the kitchen. I was like, you're reliving that exercise. What you're not doing is mimicking that. And they kind of talk you through it. They say, okay, do you remember coming in the front door? Was it cold? Was it wet? Was it raining? Was it hot? Did you leave your keys here? So you kind of talk through that without trying to actually get to the result. Because the moment you opened the door, you didn't know what was going on. You were focused on opening the door. You open the door, and then at what stage did you realize the dog is in here? And then did you find the dog? And they slow everything down. They're not aiming for an emotion. It's not about that. Once you do that, it's all over. You specifically work on things that feed the memory of the situation and the place. And that became known generally as an effective memory. Now, a lot of people couldn't cope with that. Either they didn't want to do it because they felt kind of weird tapping into their own stuff, or they didn't feel like they had to. And Stella Adler was one of those people. Basically what happened is in 1934, Stella went to Paris where she met Stanislavski himself. Keep in mind that Lee Strasberg never actually met Stanislavski. He worked with Borislavsky and Usmanskaya. That's where he learned his craft from them. So she went there and she said to him, hey, man, listen, I'm struggling. We're doing this play. I struggle with this effective memory stuff. And he said to her, it's not for you. And I've heard some interesting teachers, at Strasberg, I remember saying, hey, it's not for you. And you go, wait a minute, He said, it's not for you. But then she described what he was doing. And he said to her, listen, I don't actually do that anymore. So Boleslavsky and Uspenskaya studied with Stanislavski when he was doing that chapter of his life. And then when he went to a different chapter, Stella met him. And he said, I don't do that any longer. I'm aware of it, but now I do this. So then she came back and she kind of, went back to I spent quite a few, I think 2 months together, working on her, working on character development, work on all these things. And then she went back to America. And she said to everyone, listen, guys, here's the problem. I just met with this guy named Stanislavski that we all love and admire, and he told me something very different from Lee. And Lee said, yeah, but this is what he used to teach. And Stella said, well, he doesn't do that anymore, and this is the new thing. What happened is that some of the people at the group theater liked that voice. One of them was Robert Lewis, or Bobby Lewis, more commonly known as. The other one was Sanford Meisner, and they said, hey, we like what we're hearing over here. So there was a rift between the two, so big, actually. What happened is when Lee Strasberg passed away, Stella turned up to class and said to everyone, hey, stand up, a great man of the theater died today. And she had everyone stand up for, a minute or two silence. And as people sat down, she said, it's going to take 100 years to repair the damage that man did to the theater. Stella was brutal. You got to know that's what she was, right? She did it very charmingly, very open, you know what I'm saying? But that was her, and she believed that, right? So she opened her own school, and that's when the group theater kind of fell apart. People started going their own way. Kazan was directing more. Bobby Lewis was directing, and then he went on with Stella. Stella started teaching. Lee kept on directing and performing, and developing his own method, right? So they kind of fell apart, but then Kazan said, we don't want to lose what we've already got. We had this wonderful movement, things were going well, and Kazan got together with Clifford Odets again, and they continued that process of or that movement, and they did plays like Waiting for Lefty, Awake and Sing, and the other one, the big one, was Golden Boy. Now, these plays revolutionized America. They were current. They talked about the situation going on. Which one was it? Waiting for Lefty. It's about a strike. And, there's a great photo of Kazan like this with his fist up in the air. And apparently people that saw it went home and actually went on strike. Because they said, this play is showing us what's possible. And it actually changed society. It changed people's opinions, right? I actually remember Stella saying, theater is heightened because the general public is down here and the theater's up here. So all your choices have to be heightened. And if theater is heightened and the ideas are heightened, there's a good chance you'll elevate society to see things differently. That's the real magic of theater and film and storytelling. But at that time, they'd all split up, and it was Kazan who said, guys, let's not waste what we've got. And it was them that started the actor studio, okay? This was done, and by the way, after Golden Boy, which was another big one, it gave them a sense of power. It gave them a sense of, this is what we're able to do as a group. They did invite Lee Strasberg back to the actor studio, and they did invite Cheryl Crawford back also. So then they kind of went from this group theater, scattered, and let's bring everyone back there together. I have heard a story. I don't know how true or not it is, but I've heard it a couple times. When the early days, when they had the group theater, they were looking to hire someone who was a handyman. So what happened is they put an ad out, we need a handyman. And they said, we don't want to hire an actor. We need someone who's just a handyman. Because if you're doing this job but you want to be in the play, then you're not going to do a good job as a handyman. So Kazan applied for it, and they said to him, hey, listen, we're not interested in an actor. You don't want to be an actor, but we need a handyman. And that's how he got the name Gadge, for gadget, because he could be like a gadget. He could fix everything. And they said to him, listen, it's all good. You got the job, no issues. Now be honest with us. Do you want to be an actor or not? And apparently Kazan jumped over the desk and said, you bet your ass I want to be an actor. Not just an actor. I'm going to take your job, which he eventually did. I mean, he became the voice and the leader of the Actors Studio. Like I said, I don't know if that story is true, but I've heard it more than once from completely different sources. So I go, there must be some truth to it. All right. So we'll talk about the Actors Studio and when they went after that. But here's the issue. When people say the word method, we usually associate it with Lee Strasberg's method. And that's what's commonly known as the method. It's Lee Strasberg's method, right? So just to get some dates down, the Actors Studio was founded in New York in 1947, as I said, by Elia Kazan, Cheryl Crawford, and Robert Lewis. And they used the gravy and the ingredients that they had found in the group theater, which was started by Lee Strasberg, Cheryl Crawford, and Harold Clurman. They started that in 1931, who were inspired by Stanislavski and his Vakhtangov and Chekhov from the Moscow Art Theater. So the Moscow Art Theater fed the group theater, which fed the Actors Studio. And Stanislavski was so aware of this that in his book, My Life in Art, which he wrote in 1924, he wrote, I dedicate this book in gratitude to hospitable America as a token and a remembrance from the Moscow Art Theater, which she took so kindly to her heart. So he was very aware that America took all of his knowledge to the heart and developed their own pathway from that. So they're all interconnected, right? The other thing that happened after that is that when they did these last few plays, Golden Boy especially, it really was, they'd actually delivered what they promised. They delivered a new theater which is socially, what's the word I'm looking for? It's socially relevant. And they brought in the people that the studio system in the old days wouldn't necessarily hire. They didn't all look like, the face, the perfect face and the good looks and all that kind of stuff. So they hired people that are more color, more characteristics, more character, more down to earth, more gritty. And that's how they found their own voice, which one could argue in the very, very early days, this was what's known today as like indie filmmakers. They were the indie theater makers. So you got to give them the credit there. That's what they did. All right. Once again, when they did that, Kazan and Bobby Lewis taught classes, all right? But then they went back there together. So now, the other misconception that people have about the method is that they think Lee Strasberg, they think Actors Studio, and they think Marlon Brando. Brando didn't actually study with Strasberg. He studied with Stella. And the big misconception here is he actually studied with Stella for 3 years. You don't learn this stuff in a weekend workshop. I can't get that word out enough, right? It takes years to develop an actor's body, and that's a lot of the stuff that Marlon Brando did, right? So let's now talk specifically about Lee Strasberg. Massive when it comes to relaxation. Massive. He has a technique called relaxation, and you sit in a chair, and one of the reasons why you do it on a chair is because you can get a chair on a film set, and you sit, and the theory behind it, once again, I'm paraphrasing and I'm watering it down, but you get the idea, is as you move something to let go of tension, your mind, don't just think about it, actually feel the muscles moving. And you make a sound, all these different sounds. It's like I tell people when you sit in a chair and you sigh and you go, I'm glad that's over. That's your body letting go of tension when you laugh, when you cry. Tension, sound, movement gets rid of it. Because as Lee Strasberg used to say, if you have a math problem and you have a lot of tension, you wouldn't be able to do it, right? If you're lifting a piano, I think that was the example that was given, because all this tension stops this from coming down here. But his big one was the effective memory, okay? But it was Lee who gave relaxation the structure that most of us know today. It was Lee who gave the effective memory the structure that we know today. He did after that things like, I'll ramble them off quickly, and I'll give a very brief description of things. Coffee cup exercise, which a lot of amazing actors still do to this day as an acting muscle. You sit down, create a coffee cup, not think about it, actually touch it, rediscover it. You're not mimicking what you did last time. Then there's things like shaving or makeup exercises. You sit in the mirror and you shave. You actually feel the water dripping down. And then you do things like rain, fabric. What's it like to be out in the rain? Where do you feel the rain? Shower. I'm just going off memory here. Sunlight. You sit down and you feel the sun. And people sit there going, why do I have to learn this? What's this got to do with the scene? I hear that every day. People go, no, it's about, can you rediscover the rain, not mimic it? Can you rediscover the sun as you move here and feel it specifically? That moment that I'm looking for the rain right here or the sun, I'm private. I'm not performing. I'm actually focused on this. There's a wonderful exercise, and it's called counting the boards. So you get an actor and you get them to stand on stage, and they just kind of sit there looking around. They go, okay, what am I doing here? People are staring at me. And then you go, okay. And then they get nervous, or then they feel the urge to perform. And it looks stupid. And then you say, can you now count the boards on the stage? So they start counting the boards. That moment that they're counting the boards, they're preoccupied by something. They're not trying to entertain you. And it's night and day. So when you're doing sensory work and you're sitting there focused on something, in that moment, you're present, you're current. And that's a big thing of Lee's work, to be in the moment. But as I said earlier, his biggest tool is the effective memory exercise. Now, a lot of people had problem with it because here I'm working with an actor, and all of a sudden, this guy's got to take, X amount of time to get into it and remember the dog and finding the dog. It all comes down to where you studied it, how you learned it, who taught it to you. If it's taught well, you're not going to sit there for 20 minutes and develop the dog thing in the kitchen. You've lost the whole play then. Great actors can do this, and they can plant it earlier. So by the time it's needed, it's there. That takes a lot of skill. Most people that say, I don't get Lee's work or I don't understand it, they don't understand it. The work is amazing, right? It works for, and I can name drop amazing actors that use it, but it works for them, but it's a very good skill. When I first went to LA and I went to Strasberg, there was 8 teachers there. 5 of them were okay. They knew the work intellectually, but there was 3 that stood out to me, and they were brilliant. For me personally, one of them was a guy named Mark Marno. He was brilliant. What made him good is that he said, listen, this is Lee's work, but don't think like that. Learn it for yourself. Learn it this way, learn it that way. Anna Strasberg, who still has the school, David's taken over now, her son, knows the work extremely well. It's not like she was just Lee's wife. Do you know what I'm saying? She knew the work very, very well, and she could teach it very well. And Anna was very good at showing you the bigger picture. This is one ingredient of the bigger picture, and this is where it fits. And, you heard Anna talk, and you go, got it. I see why that's important, right? So it depends on who teaches you these things. And a good teacher makes it what I call usable. It's no good to know all this stuff if you can't actually use it on a film set. So having said that, a lot of people came up with that problem for Lee's because some couldn't do it. That's all, right? So the other thing that he did also was animal exercises. And a very, very big one, which I think is brilliant, is personal objects. It's not just a coffee cup. It's a personal object. This isn't just a coffee cup. Here's our product placement, by the way. This cup here means nothing to me. It's just a cup. I actually don't care for it. But this cup, it's one of these coffee cups that you find in New York. It's ceramic. Someone gave it to me. But it reminds me of being in New York with those, paper coffee cups. It reminds me of the Greek thing. So I've got a connection to this cup. If this broke, I wouldn't give a shit. I'd buy it in 2 seconds. This one matters. This is what we call heightened. And Lee was very good at teaching you that. By the way, I call him Lee. I never met him. He died, way before I got there. But I heard Anna Strasberg talk a lot about him. So you just get used to that. I'm not being casual. A lot of respect for the guy, right? But it was Lee that taught this kind of stuff. How to make this private. How to make this private. How can you make this so it's not just a pen? I tell people, you're going to be on a film set one day and Harry Potter, and they're going to go green screens everywhere, blue screens, whatever they use. And someone's going to go, this is your wand. If I treat it like a prop, that's all it is. But if I can make this, it's a wand, and it belonged to my great-great-grandfather, all of a sudden I'm going to go, wow, this now is mine. And that's a skill. This isn't just a table on a film set. This is my table. Who sat on it? Who worked on it? And that skill, we shouldn't use the word trick, that skill is what Lee made people understand, that this is a personal object. And I remember you do all these exercises and, you go and then you're doing coffee cup and some person next to you is all the amazing exercises, and then you hear the instructor, like Marno in my case, and Hedy Sontag, who's still there, I believe, brilliant teacher also, right? You all of a sudden you go, wow, I want to do that exercise. And then I want to do that exercise because that one looks amazing. People used to bring in, this was before we had iPhones and all that stuff, cassettes and play loud music, and people are doing over that. And you go, what am I doing, a stupid coffee cup for? But then one of my teachers said, by the time you've done those, you realize that every single exercise you do has those same ingredients. Every exercise you do is private and it's personal. You drink a cup of coffee privately. So it's one thing to understand all this intellectually. It's another thing to have moments when you're on a film set or something and you go, ooh, I now see the connection between the exercise in class and how it's used in the real scene. And I'm not name dropping here. We were on a film set once. The film is called Mistress by an amazing guy, Barry Primus, which I'll do a whole podcast just on Barry one day. Brilliant guy. Brilliant. I can't do it justice in a few minutes. Barry directed a film called The Mistress, which just by chance I happen to have right here, sitting on my desk. Find it. It's brilliant, right? That's the French poster, I believe. And I just saw that, and that's triggered off this memory. There's what they call effective memory right there. So we were downtown LA. It was the garment part of LA. And we were on a top of a building. And Christopher Walken was playing a character who had to jump off the building. And part of the dialogue is, I still remember, it's funny how it comes back to you. That's effective memory right there. And he's going, Marvin, Marvin, Marvin. He played a writer or an actor who was not happy with his life, and he jumps off the cliff or off the building. We were preparing for that shot. And across the building from us, this was like 4 a.m., all the skyrise, all the lights were off of these little apartments. It was a shitty part of town. And I remember one of the lights lit up. And we see this guy, and it was a tiny apartment, but you could see inside his kitchen, he sat there boiling milk or water. I don't have a clue what he boiled, but he boiled something. And then he sat in his window, and he drank his morning drink. And I thought, oh my God, that's a private moment. Before this guy goes off to his job, whatever the job is, these are a few moments that he has, that he's private, he's alone, he's thinking about his own life and what he should do with it. I thought that's a glimpse into a private moment, that he's so valuable as an actor. I do remember, funny story, he looked up, he could see across the street, building, and a bunch of people on the roof, and he actually pulled the blinds down. And I thought, oh my God, what a moment. We interrupted his private moment, right? I do remember Chris Walken saying, that's what we're trying to avoid in life. To end up in there was a brilliant moment. I go, wow. Little did that guy know that there's Christopher Walken staring at him. But the point is this. Those private moments don't happen on stage or on a film set. Skilled actors put them there. So if I'm drinking a cup of coffee or if I'm sitting by myself waiting for someone, I want to see a private moment. That's a skill. That's what we say there's a difference between a trained actor or just someone who's memorizing lines. So a lot of that private moment stuff did come from Lee, right? Then, let's talk about Stella now. Stella was massive. Massive as far as, she walked in the room and you felt it. Talk about a grand lady of the theater. There's a whole bunch, every now and then I get actors doing monologues for me, and there's always one, I forget what it's called, but it's about a woman who says, I'm the grand lady of the theater. Stella was the grand lady of the theater. Diva, the word diva doesn't come in close, right? Ruthless, hard, fair, and she knew her shit without a doubt. I actually met her. I remember we got to LA and caught a cab, and the cab driver was telling us about that. This was before internet. You couldn't just Google Stella Adler. Do you know what I'm saying? You had to know about her, hear about her, find a book about her. So I found out, wow, there's Stella. Literally, I arrived in Martin Luther King Day, and it was a long weekend. I still remember it was Monday night. Once again, funny how these things come back to you. That's what Lee talked about, effective memory. And the building or the theater at the time was off Argyle, North Argyle in L.A. And I think now it's a subway or something. I didn't even know Subway had L.A. had a subway, but there it is. So you go there, and from the outside, it looked like nothing, like a door. There wasn't a big banner saying, Stella Adler lives here. There was nothing, like a little sign on the door, and you go, wow. When you open that door, oh my God, just finding paradise, finding home. It was a place, it was just amazing. There was a bunch of people there, and Stella was, stage right with her desk, and usually there was Irene Gilbert or Joanne Linville, who was a teacher. I studied with Joanne 1,000 years ago. And there was Stella, and people stood up and applauded her, and she took it in, and very grand lady, and she was very passionate and very strong, and wah, rah, 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 rah. I remember on my second visit I went there, I sat next to, and I know he will not remember this, I don't expect him to, but I do, William Shatner was right there. And I was like, oh, on my second day in LA, there's William Shatner. I remember going, I've arrived, you know what I'm saying? But there he was. And you'd see these amazing people get on stage, and she would just knock them out. It was like going onto a stage with a heavyweight boxer. No breathing room with Stella. Boom. This is wrong, and let me tell you why. Get on stage again. Boom. This is wrong. Let me tell you why. But the let me tell you why was spot on. Spot on. God bless her. All right? So you'd go there, you'd study with teachers like Joanne Linville, and they teach you her things, and you'd spend time. One of Stella's biggest things, and I urge actors to understand this, is place. Where does this scene take place? I'm not saying other teachers like Lee didn't take in place, but their forefront, their biggest skill known for was like Lee, effective memory. Stella's was place and character. Where are we? If we did this in a restaurant, it would be very, very different. If we did it in a temple or in a church, it would be very, very different. If we did it in a park, very, very different. Where does the divorce take place? I'll give an example so you'll understand this. And I'm thinking of Marriage Story right now. Amazing film. Strasberg actors in that, right? Now, if this was our house and we're married and we bought this house together, right? Now we're going through a divorce. It's our house. It's 50-50. You take your half, you take my half. If this was my house and I had inherited this house from my parents and it's my house and I meet my wife and she comes into it, yeah, I'm sure the law says 50-50 or whatever the law says, but it's my house. I will fight harder for it. If this is my wife's house and she got it from her parents and I married here, it's her house. At the end of the day, I'd feel like a visitor. Do you know what I'm saying? It matters. So here's some marriage advice for you. Move in together. There you go. Let's get that out of the way, right? Trust me on that. But the point being that whatever was in the script, Stella had this other magic gift, which, as you can all see as I'm talking, both Lee and Stella took this from the peers above them, which was the Moscow Art Theater group, because they all made suggestions of these, but it's Lee and Stella that gave it a structure and form. Stella would then say, what if it was your house? How would the scene be differently? What if it was her house? How would the scene be differently? What if it was a joint house? It doesn't matter what's in the script. I can't change the script. I can't say it's my house if it's not in there. You could try it for one's sake. I was reading, or someone told me how when they did Marriage Story, they did 50 takes over 2 days. Most people would not know what to do with 50 takes. Because what they're doing is, and I've said this again, and I'm fighting for this, most actors, I would say easily 90%, do lines and emotions. No awareness of whose house it is, no awareness of place, no awareness of, hey, this is my divorce, but I'm taking this, you can keep this. You understand this now. Great actors put those there. And as I tell people, everyone gets the same exact script. But great actors know that this cup is mine. Great actors know that if it's my place, it would matter. So now I could do 50 takes and make those little adjustments for each take. Otherwise, I'm just mimicking. Then there's no reason to do 50 takes, is there? But if you make little adjustments, and I urge directors to direct this way, I keep telling, I get physically ill when I hear directors directing with a result in mind. Give me more anger. What garbage is that? I don't wake up saying I'm going to be angry today, right? But if you say, hey, today you own 60% of the house, or you own 90% and she's trying to take away, then you go, now you'll see anger now. You got me? So good directors direct without a result in mind, but they know where it might go. Otherwise, what's the point of doing 50 takes? You're going to get 50 of the same thing, and it's a waste of everyone's time. Keeping in mind, and once again, I tell people this, and then we'll get back onto the lovely story here about acting teachers and stuff. All of this is pointless if you as an actor don't have an actor's body. All this is pointless if you can't actually deliver it, because then you do what we talk intellectual discussions. Who cares about those? They're great for the critics, not for the actor. So Stella's big on that. Place matters. She also talked about character, and character is, once again, Stella was brilliant for that. How does one character do the same thing differently from the other? If you see Jake LaMotta with his wife, he'll send frying pans across the room. Do you know what I'm saying? He'll flip tables. Another character won't. The lines are the same. It's how the delivery of those lines matter. And Stella used to say the script is the blueprint. You the bone, you are the muscle. How we say, there we go. How we say the lines is our right as an artist. Keeping the character in mind. So it's not me saying it. It's how would the character say it based on background, knowledge, social strata, parents' upbringing. All these things matter, and we just bulldoze them with acting. We just learn lines and do emotions. How one character does something is the way they do something else. That was Stella's gift by far, all right? The other thing I tell actors, this is a very, very, very general thing, all right, of the difference between Lee and Stella, if you can understand this, and it's very general, but you get the concept. If someone said it's cold, Lee would say, okay, when do you remember a time being cold? The other day it was freezing. Where were you? What were you? And as you sit there, remember where you were, you actually start to feel the cold. And then they'd say, where do you feel it specifically? Right now, I'd feel it here. This is exposed, right? Stella would say, forget that. Act cold. Acting cold looks like this. What most people don't understand, and most people that don't understand the method, Stella still said the same thing after that. She'd say, once you act cold, now make it specific. It's not enough to act cold. You can act cold for about 10, 15 seconds. Now, where does it affect you specifically? So Lee said, work internally. Where are you? What are you doing? All that kind of stuff. Do you feel the cold? Stella said, jumpstart that, act cold, and then make it specific. They both were about being specific. You can't bypass that one, right? The point is, I tell people all the time, learn both of them. They're both valid. One day it will be cold. You don't have to act. That's Meisner, and we'll talk about him very soon. You know what I'm saying? Learn them all as skills because they matter. The other thing that Stella was unmistakably the best was imagination. Once again, what if? Use your imagination, right? I will give you an example now. There's someone watching a documentary, and now you just look online and find all these things, and you're watching something horrific. I don't want every now and then you see something, you actually don't want to watch it. The reason why you don't want to watch it is that your mind in that moment is imagining you going through that. You imagine someone going, oh, and you go, oh my God, I can't. But your body does it. Your body has the capacity to put you there and to imagine it, and then you actually feel like you're there, so you don't want to watch it. Someone just walking past, just going, oh, what's that, and they move on. But you've invested time in it. In that specific moment, you believe that you're in that circumstance. And the fact that your body can do that, which it does, if you learn that and master that as a skill, then it becomes an acting skill. And that's what Stella was good at. What if this happened? What if you found your dog dead? You don't have to have the dog that died, but what if? And then what if you found that person? Or what if it just started raining bubble gum and people go, I want to be a serious actor. Yeah, right now it's raining bubble gum. That's why I should do like the chicken exercise. The very famous story is Marlon Brando pretending to be a chicken. And Stella would say, what if there's a nuclear bomb coming down? And people ran around like idiots. And Marlon just sat there. And Stella said to him, Marlon, there's a nuclear bomb coming. And he says, I'm a chicken. I don't know anything about nuclear bombs. It's brilliant if you think about it. But the point I try and get across to actors is that in that moment, Marlon believed he was a chicken. He didn't do it as an acting exercise, because I get so many people and I just go, what? They turn around and go, why do I have to do this exercise? Why do I have to be a chicken? Because that's our job. Right now, your job is to become a chicken and to believe it. And the more specific you make it, I watch my kid, 8-year-old or whatever he is, outside in the garden talking to imaginary dinosaurs and chasing them and using potions. And you go, in that moment, see, we all had that when we were kids. We created imaginary worlds and we believed them. And everything that didn't feed that world, we shut down. That's a skill. And that's what Stella did very, very well. What if? What if you were a big bear? What if you were a wizard? So you start acting, but then she'd say, do you have a window? Do you have a door? Touch your door, touch your window. Stella was brilliant at that. The other thing she was very, very good at, and once again, no one beat her at this. First one is what they call the through line of action. I believe Stanislavski, I think that's what called it. But she was very good at the action of the character. I'll give you an example. If I'm Luke Skywalker and I got to go, get my jet and go kill the Death Star, there are things I got to do. I got to climb up the ladder to get into the jet. The moment I sit in it, I got to push all these lovely buttons, turn it on. Right now, even though I know I'm going to war, the immediate action is to do this. Click, 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 click. Hold the steering wheel, adjust my seat, put my helmet on. These are the immediate actions. Those immediate actions will be fed by what the bigger picture is. Because if I'm just going for a leisurely cruise and there's no stress, I can take my time with them. I'm still doing the same action, but I'm taking my time. But if there's a war on, the action is, let's call it, for shit directing, more energy. But I'm not thinking more energy. I'm thinking, hey man, there's a war and I got to get out of here quickly. But I can't pass these procedures. I can't bypass them. I can't not put my helmet on. I can't, because the plane won't take off. So a lot of actors bulldoze those things because they go, well, now I got to act. No, you still got to turn the engine on, man. Remember that. You still got to do all this stuff. And great actors know that it's a skill. We don't cut corners. Every time you get in that plane, you better push all the buttons, put your helmet on, and don't feel pressured, especially by some directors. They all just don't know. I got to put my helmet on. If I'm trying to create this imaginary world, I got to put my helmet on. Because it's very easy to lose that and lose that world. So Stella was good at that. She called it like the sequence of events. It's not what she called it. I forget the names. But she used to talk about the action of the character. And she also talked about that's what defines a character. As we said earlier, different characters do different, things differently, right? I wouldn't put my seatbelt on, someone else might, for instance. We all understand that. But it all came from Stanislavski also. Now, the other thing she was brilliant at, and like I've said in the past, no one beat her at that, script analysis. Brilliant. And I remember her talking about certain writers, and those that know Stella would know this. She did it in such a way that she almost hinted like she knew them, and she knew them intimately. I knew such and such, and I knew such and such. And you go, ooh, your own mind would go, ooh, I wonder what happened between those two. But she knew writers. She actually knew them so well, and she was brilliant at it. One thing I want you all to understand, and I get a lot of people going, do you teach, script analysis? Do you? And yeah, anyone could package a class and call it script analysis. I personally think it's the worst thing to do because you're doing script analysis without knowing it. So many people study script analysis, same as writers, by the way, and they know it intellectually. They make things on their notes and their script and I'm like, yeah, great, guys. Acting is doing. Get in your jet and you will find the words, okay, ready to go. You're going to say those words the moment you've put your helmet on and the moment you've clicked on the on buttons. You're not going to say them before then. So that's your script analysis. It's no good to put down on the script, say those words, on the third beat. Till I put my helmet on, I ain't saying those words. And people need to understand that. You can script analyze a script all day long and know it intellectually. It's no good if you don't do the action of it. And that's what Stella was about, the action of it. Brilliant at script analysis, but once again, she was adamant about it's no good to do it on paper. No good to do it intellectually. You have to know what a beat change would be, because if there was a fire in my jet, that's a beat change. You don't have to write on your script, there's a beat change. There's a freaking fire on there. Depending on where the fire is and how it's going on, you make an adjustment in the moment. Brilliant, all right? So, if you can think of Stella as far as character and action, those are her strengths, and place and all these things that matter, okay? But she still talked about doing these things and connecting internally. People don't understand that. If you don't connect internally, then it's disconnected, and we get a sense of it. It's acting, it's paraphrasing. But she said if you put the character under the given circumstances correctly, then your own body will believe it, like we talked about watching a documentary, and the emotions, for lack of a better word, would just happen on their own. We trust that. Lee was very good primarily, I'm not saying it's the only thing, primarily at developing the actor's body internally so that those things actually came through, right? Then there was the other big influence of American acting teachers, which without a doubt had to be Sanford Meisner. Now, originally it was from Brooklyn, and if you know people from Brooklyn, it's a whole other thing, right? He's born, I believe, in 1905. There we go. Here's another amazing teacher who taught a thing that, once again, I believe, me personally, it is the most mistaught skill out there. Meisner did a thing called, he wasn't a big fan of, effective memory, right? He first, as I said earlier, was in the group theater. He wasn't anti-method or anything like that. He just, became skills. But he learned from Lee, and he learned from Stella, right? But they were all from the same soup. I want people to understand they all came from the same kind of thing. They just had slightly different interpretations of it, right? Someone said it, a very good point. It's like Christianity. You know what I'm saying? There's all different disciples, and they had a different version of it. But they're not dissimilar. You can't bag one, favor the other one, right? His chief ingredient was not to be intellectual about these things, but to actually he talked about connecting with the person that's in front of you, to actually talk from the heart. So you need to take this in here. And he came up with what we call the repeat exercise. Here's how it's taught badly. The idea is that you sit there and you say, right now you're wearing a black T-shirt. And then the other person say, I'm wearing a black T-shirt. And then you'd say to me, you're wearing a blue T-shirt. And I'd say, I'm wearing a blue T-shirt. You're wearing black pants. I'm wearing black pants. And then if something happened, they say, you're screaming at me. And you go, I'm screaming at you. Where I believe it's taught badly is that you get two actors on stage, and what they do it for is to try and throw each other. See, they're doing it for the audience. They're trying to see who's clever. They're trying to see how can I do it to get to the other person. So I say, you're angry, and then they say, you're angry. That's not what the exercise is about. That's show and tell. That's you in the classroom trying to impress the group or something. The idea behind it is that you sit there, and what is up for grabs, what matters is the way that person said that line the very last time. So if you say something to them and they say it back a certain way, that quality feeds the way I talk back to you. If I say, what are you doing? You're going to go, Jesus Christ, Or if I say, hey, what are you doing? Same exact line, but it comes out differently. So that would fuel my response. And that's what that was about. Being in the moment, being present to the way the other person feeds you. Most actors don't do that because they've memorized the line. They know exactly how it's going to come out. They know exactly how it's going to come out every single time, irrelevant of what the other person gives me. And most actors fail at this. It's very scary to work in this way because I have no clue how I'm going to say the line in that moment till I hear you say the line. And it's a big issue for me, a lot of theater fails at this. You go out there and you see the scene and you hear the person say the line exactly the same way, exactly the same way, exactly the same way, exactly the same way, and you go, what is this? That's a memorized reaction, that stage, and you can spot it a mile away. And then you leave and you go, there was no connection between the actors. They're not listening to each other. They're not letting each other be affected by the way the person talks to you. That's massive. And what you can't and should never do as an actor is, can you say that line with more anger to me because it feeds me? No. You don't do that with an argument. You don't go to someone and say, hey, can you be louder because it feeds me? No. If you're fighting over this cup, I'll be loud. If I'm fighting over this, you can have it. Good actors plant these things so the loudness comes out. But the other thing that you weren't meant to do was do this repeat exercise with a result in mind. You can't say, hey, now you're being angry. You can say, now you're being loud. That's different. So you would do that. And once actors did that, then what he would do is give you an action. They called it the knock on the door. There's always a knock on the door at Meisner's class. The action is this. The action can't be something that's simple, like I'm just sitting here reading a book, right? The action has to be something that's difficult to do. I'll give you an example. Let's assume you're getting the medicines ready for someone that's very, very sick. You're a parent and your child is, deathly ill and they need their medication and you've got 20 medications and they all need to be assorted differently. And it's not a tablet, it's a scoop. So you've got to measure. Now I've got to be very, very careful to measure this, to measure this, to measure this, to measure this. And if I envision or hear my kid screaming in pain, I would be more distressed because now I've got to get it right and the poor kid's screaming. And then you open the door and you go, you're wearing a blue shirt. I'm going to answer like, hey man, I'm wearing a blue shirt, but leave me the hell alone because I'm busy. I can't say all these words. I just got to say I'm wearing a blue shirt. And then you're going to go, oh, you're panicked or whatever they say. And I'll say, yeah, I'm wearing a blue. That's all based on the action. It's the need of the action that feeds the way I say the lines. It's not what we call neck up. Neck up is me going, nothing going on. It's in the moment. And that was by far Meisner's biggest skill or gift as an acting teacher, all right? It was brilliant. Now, I didn't actually study. I'll share to be young again. I'll share a story with you guys. I went to LA and at the time I was at Strasberg, and this girl, and God bless, I don't remember her name. I remember she was from Canada. Beautiful girl. And she invited me back to her place. I was there. I wasn't there for 3 months yet, and I know it was 3 months because I just had enough money to pay for the first 3 months of school, and I hadn't got my second invoice yet, all right? I knew it was coming, but I hadn't paid it yet. I remember it was around that time. So this girl's sitting there doing, talking to me, and she goes, so, do you study Meisner? And I'm like, I don't know, who the hell is he, Like I said, there was no Google then. You couldn't just Google Meisner. And she goes, Meisner's the best. And I went, okay. And I remember going, wow, she's gorgeous, Okay, I'll go to Meisner, whatever you like. And she, went in her car, didn't have a car at the time, takes me there. And I went to see, there was a teacher. I don't remember the teacher, but I remember the second time I went that Meisner was there teaching it, right? Probably in the valley from memory. And then she's like going back home, and I'm trying to be a really, really good student, and she's telling me all these things. Looking back, I assumed she wanted me to go back to her place and do whatever we do. And she's going, so what do you think of my red shirt? And I'm like, okay, I'm doing the exercise now. And I'm trying to be a good student going, you got a red shirt? And she's going, yeah, I got a red shirt. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, the poor girl was trying to hit on me. And I'm trying to do this stupid repeat exercise. I was young. What do you want? All right. But I remember her dropping me off, and she never responded to me after that again. She's like, this your house? I'm like, yeah, bye. That was the extent of my Meisner exercise. But I did later on, he lived in Sherman Oaks, and I lived in Sherman Oaks at the time. And there was a shitty little coffee shop. Now, remember, if you're coming from Melbourne, all coffee shops in LA are shitty, all right? It was a shitty place for our take. But I remember when I'm sitting there, and I see him, and there he was. And I went up to him, and I said, hey, man, many, many ages ago, I remember I was on your classes and stuff like this. And we spoke. It didn't last more than 10 minutes. But I do remember this. He said to me, it doesn't matter where you study. I want my students to get out there and understand everything. Everything. He said, if the repeat exercise didn't work for you, find what works for you. Go out there and make it happen. And he's the one that I remember. He said to me a quote, and this is, there you go. I got the best 5 minutes of acting classes with an amazing guy. He's the one that told me the phrase, Michael Chekhov said this, don't dismiss anything till you make it practical. Meaning, don't go, oh, I intellectually don't think that this exercise is good for me, until you try it. Try all these things. Don't go, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. And I tell actors, when you have an idea, don't go, I don't think that works. I don't think that works. You're going to end up doing nothing. Try them all with a skill. And then you're going to find things. And then you get better to just jumping off a cliff and learning how to swim on your own. Amazing guy. The other thing that he said, and I really, really, really believe that you can't get a better description. Acting is behaving truthfully under imaginary circumstances. You've all heard this paraphrased, and you do hear a lot of teachers talking about this today. Came from Meisner himself. That's our job. To react based on imaginary circumstances. And Sanford Meisner gave that gift to the acting industry. So that's what the repeat exercise is all about. It's about being in the moment, right? Now, as far as I am concerned personally, that's where the buck stops. The massive ones were Stanislavski and the people around him. And then the massive ones were Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, Sanford Meisner. Bobby Lewis is very, very good. You should look into his book. I think it's called Method Madness. Brilliant. Different understanding of it. The group theater and the original Actor Studio, which is still around today, they easily touch at least 80% of the actors out there today. They may not know it. They could say, hey, my teacher's this, banana, Peter Kalos at the Actors Lab. I go, yeah, but Peter Kalos got that information from these people. I know what I take from Lee's teaching. I know what I take from Stella's teaching. And I try and give credit to where credit's due. I tell my students, this came from Lee, this came from Stella, this came from that. And it's important to understand that you're a professional carpenter. You're a craftsman. the amount of people, and I call it stupidity, and I tell them to their face, you're stupid, politely. You can't come in and go, I only do Lee. I only do Stella. I only do Meisner. And I get a lot of that. I go, what does that mean? You're a carpenter. Come fix this table. I don't give a shit what tools you use. No one cares what you use. Your job is to know, what do I need for today to fix this table right now? What do I need as an actor to do this scene right now? Because here's what I want you to understand. If I did a scene, the same exact scene, with this actor or with this actor or with that actor, they will all be different based on what Meisner talked about. What's the vibe between me and this person? You meet some people and you automatically love them because you go, oh my God, I got a good vibe from them. If we're playing friends, I can just feed off that. You don't have to bring sand to the beach. If you're doing a scene between, someone and you're meant to be aroused by them, if they're already turning you on, you don't have to do shit. You don't have to substitute. I hate I'm substituting. Why are you substituting? You're already attracted to them. Just learn your lines. If you already feel negative about this person, there it is. I remember Dustin Hoffman talking about when he did Kramer versus Kramer, he was going through a divorce at the time. He didn't have to substitute. It was already there. So knowing which tool to bring to the job is a craftsman. And the more tools you know, the more you're able to fix something without show and tell and going this. I'm not saying all, but most teachers after these big ones are residual effects of these. There was, who was it? Let's talk about it really quickly. Brecht was a big one and talked about distorting realism, like think of a Picasso of our world. There's the Suzuki method, which, by the way, is a plug here. Emma Percy's the only one worth studying it here in Melbourne. She's brilliant at it. You should follow it. Do it. Try it. I know like Brando did things and James did things like take Tai Chi and, ballet classes to find things. Go knock yourselves out, all right? But the big ones were those ones. And a lot of teachers after that, and we're all out there, like I said, use, certain terms and, you hear people going, oh my God, such and such said this. Yeah, but they got, De Niro says the line, talent is in the choices. But Stella said that also. Stella said that, choices are what makes an actor. So Bob got that and, did his own thing with it. They all do, right? Every one of us is the messenger at this moment. And they were the big ones, and you got to learn them all. They all brought things to it. Learn them all. Have them in your belt, not up here. In your system. So that if I dropped you on in the rough waters, you know exactly what stroke to swim. Think of it this way. You can't go in the deep water and just jump off a cliff and go, should I do the backstroke or should I do this? You're sinking already. Swim. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. What do you have in your body right now as needed? Not up here. What are you capable of? And that's what we call acting skill. That's a craftsman. People don't understand that. To know this shit intellectually is a waste of your time, right? Now, I'll give an example. Robert Duvall studied with Meisner and with Lee. All right? He did both. Pacino, primarily Lee Strasberg, primarily. Brando, Stella. All right? Hoffman, I think, did both. All right? De Niro did both Lee and Stella. Okay? Whatever you need in that moment. And when I come across students, I look at some students and I know that, the students that do coffee cup and all of a sudden they're falling apart emotionally. And you go, hey, that's where you are. You're an emotional being. Now you need to learn not to do it for therapy, not to do it for this and for that. You need to learn this and this and this and this. And other people sit there, could do freaking coffee cup for 10 years, but they're not connecting and say, you need to make this real. You need to know that it's not an acting exercise. You're actually having coffee with this person and they matter. So everyone's different. And it comes down to teaching people. Don't just say Lee said this or Stella said. What that person needs is what we call the actor-teacher relationship. And you've got to find that with a good teacher that you go, you know what? I get the vibe. They understand me. One of my best teachers said to me, it's no good if I tell you to get up and do a triple somersault if you don't know how to get up from the chair. Before I get up here, I got to move the chair back, move out the way, and then I'll do a great triple somersault. But the point being, That's what we're all looking for. So take all this for a grain of salt. Take everything. Remember what Chekhov says. Don't dismiss anything till you make it practical. Please try these things. And the reason why I started my podcast with the history of acting teachers and methods is so we all understand where our ingredients comes from. Now, this isn't a history lesson. All this adds up to zero if you don't do it. I don't want to hear you having intellectual discussions about on the film set about who's better, who's Meisner, who's blah. Shut up. Learn it, have it, do it. The rest is great for theater critics and, theater people that talk and talk and talk. We're actors, we do. Right? Get off the cliff, get out there, and do this amazing work. See you again soon.